Before we get into this, I do want to preface it with the fact that I don't think all of these teams are bad, obviously. I think these teams are just the teams that are the most disappointing or had probably one of some of the worst starts to the season out of any team that was expected to be good. And I obviously don't think most of them are going to continue on this prediction or projection. So you'll hear me talk about that later on a few of the other teams, but I just wanted to preface it with that and emphasize that I do think these teams are still good. I'm not trying to argue that they are bad, but they just had a rough start to the season. And first off, that's going to get us into our first team, a team that honestly I would have had as a major part of this list, but now they're just more of an honorable mention. The Philadelphia 76ers obviously were favorites to contend again this season. They bolstered their roster. They got a few new role players, some key pieces. PJ Tucker, a guy that has been on, 2 in a row now of very serious contenders. He won with the Bucks. And last year in the Eastern Conference Finals with the Heat, they got Daniel House, who's supposed to be a better 3-and-D type of guy. They got D'Anthony Melton. On top of this, extending James Harden on what was a very team-friendly deal, which allowed them to get guys like Tucker, guys like House, getting him on that team-friendly deal, allowing him to, the last few years, James Harden has had injuries. He struggled to have a full healthy season, and now he's had an entire offseason to be healthy. He's had an entire offseason to work with his team. And, he allowed them to sign those players. He had some more chemistry with his teammates, and they were expected to be very good. Unfortunately, that just didn't happen, and it hasn't happened yet. Obviously, we knew it would take some time for the Sixers to get going, but after a 1-4 start, a lot of questions were running around in Philadelphia asking whether or not Joel Embiid and James Harden can coexist. It seemed like, every given game, Joel Embiid would go off. James Harden would go off. They just couldn't get it going together. And fortunately for them, they have won 3 straight games, including one against Toronto and one against Chicago, 2 very quality NBA teams. So they are convincing me now that they're able to get back on track. And that's why I don't really want to include them in the meat of this list. But now we get into what would be, like the body paragraph. You're writing an essay. This is the list. First off, I want to begin with our South Beach compadres, the Miami Heat. Fresh off another Eastern Conference Finals appearance, many people obviously thought the Heat would take a step back after losing PJ Tucker, but Kyle Lowry was bad last year. Losing PJ Tucker, the Heat needed multiple answers to have a better season, and with a 2-5 start, it's not what they wanted. Between losing Tucker, as I've said, and the aging players and, a very one-dimensional Duncan Robinson, the Heat have looked extremely thin on bodies so far through 7 games. Their main trio of Tyler Hero, Jimmy Butler, and Bam Adebayo seems to struggle to get a consistent level of talent and playing together as a trio. It seems like one of them goes off, the other two don't do well, and vice versa. Obviously, though, it is way too early to hit the panic button if you're a Miami Heat fan. The writing is not on the wall for the end of the season. They're only 2-5. It's the beginning of the year, but obviously some type of transaction is likely going to happen sometime in the future or the near future. Right now, though, they sit at 26th in points per game with about 108 and 11th in opposing points per game with 110. So if they could just get their offense going consistently, get those bench players getting points, get, their trio of stars getting buckets, they would have an easy fix to their solution. Alternatively, though, they are struggling on the boards. They only get about 40.4 rebounds per game, which is good enough to sit them at 27th in the league, which shows their flaws and their very, very bad lack of depth at the center and power forward position. Obviously, that is a theme you will see going forward on this list, is very bad rebounding numbers. So many of these teams so far have had a very rough start to the season rebounding, and that is no different with the Brooklyn Nets. After being embarrassed last year, I think, honestly, a lot of people thought the Nets would completely rebuild, but they were able somehow to kind of duct tape it back together, plug a couple of holes. It's like your boat's halfway underwater, and you just kind of seal a couple of holes and hope that it's going to stop sinking. With that in mind, though, Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, obviously, they still came into the year considered a contender by most people and most outlets, and Ben Simmons was returning. Everything seemed to come together for the Nets after a rough offseason, but they just haven't looked all that good yet this season. On top of a struggling offense, which is a shocker, just 113 points per game. The Nets are 29th in rebounds per game and 30th in opponent points per game with 39 rebounds and 122 points respectively. So the Nets defense has not only been pathetic, they just look uninterested when on the court. A guy like Giannis or like Luka, Giannis especially, has been able to take advantage of that lack of urgency. The Nets were embarrassed by Giannis. Ben Simmons was not a good defender on Giannis, which is something I never thought I'd say because he's supposed to be an elite defender. They just don't seem to have that leader on defense. And despite Kyrie Irving and Durant averaging a cool 62 points per game, outside of that, the Nets have gotten very little production from their role players. Nicholas Claxton is the next highest with 11 points per game and a good amount of rebounds, but he is not even an offensive-minded center. I doubt they'll stay this bad, but sitting at 2-5 and 12th in the Eastern Conference after a win last night over the Pacers, they have a lot of room to climb. I still think there's a lot of stuff to be worried about with this roster. They've got a lot of issues to fix, and it's going to be interesting to see how they try to fix those issues. Next up, we get into the Western Conference side of things. The Los Angeles Clippers. The Clippers are a team right now that I'm not too panicked about on this list, as they sit at 2-4 in a 4-game losing streak, which is probably the worst part of this, the 4-game losing streak after a 2-0 start. I think they just need time to get acclimated to their new system, their new situation, from bringing in new players like John Wall and to returning a guy in Kawhi Leonard who hasn't played in a very, very long time. I think it's just a matter of time that, Leonard is able to play consistently. Sure, he's missed 2 games in a row, but, he's still recovering from that injury. He's trying to get back on track. And with Paul George still there, they're going to have guys that can take over when Kawhi Leonard can't do it. But if you had to pinpoint a main issue with the Clippers, they just don't seem to be urgent. They don't seem to be playing that hard. They don't have any sense of energy or passion to fight back into the game, as they've trailed by a lot in multiple games this season. Marcus Morris Sr. even said himself that they're trying to win based off of just the talent they have. But obviously that's not the case. And as I said, I wouldn't be too worried if you're a Clippers fan. I think they will get back on track given some time to get it all rolling down the track. Thankfully, though, they have an even worse counterpart there in Los Angeles, and that is the next team on this list, the Los Angeles Lakers. Probably wouldn't be a disappointing teams list without including the Lakers, and I'm going to keep it short and sweet because I have talked about the Lakers a lot on this channel. I think so many people talk about the Lakers. They just have all kinds of issues. Shooting, defense, all around they're struggling. They won their first game last night. Very, very big for them. But if you'd like a more in-depth look at the Lakers, check out my video right here in the right corner. I know it's not, a new topic. The Lakers are very popular. They're probably the most popular NBA team. And, they're in the biggest market. They get so much attention. I didn't want this list to be all about the Lakers, so I'm going to leave it right there for them and get into the final team on this list. And surprisingly to me, surprisingly to all of you, the Golden State Warriors are struggling to start the year, sitting at 3-5 so far with 2 losses against bad teams objectively, the Hornets and the Pistons. The defending champs are off to what seems like a sluggish start to the season. While they are basically one of the best offensive teams in the NBA, they sit at 2nd overall in points per game with 119. They are tied for dead last in opponent points per game, allowing 122 points per game on average. Following this up, they only grab about 43 rebounds a night, which has consistently gotten exposed on their offensive rebounds and on their defensive rebounds on the defensive end, obviously. Surprisingly enough, I think the Warriors, just similar to the Clippers, need some time to get their chemistry going, get their system going. Is even though they do return a large majority of their big name players, Steph, Clay, Draymond, Jordan Poole, all of those guys, they also lost a few key players that played a role in their defensive and offensive success, most notably a guy named Gary Payton II, but also, Juan Toscano Anderson left for LA. Guys such as Jonathan Kuminga, JaMychal Green, Dante DiVincenzo, James Wiseman, Moses Moody, and Ty Jerome are just a short list of the new people and the new faces in their system. Sure, some of them have been there for a couple years now, but a large majority of them haven't had a good amount of minutes in their last few years. So it's likely that this is the first season they're getting major minutes in the Warriors system. And because of that, I think it's just going to take time for their new, the new bodies in their system to get used to it. And I think with time, the Warriors will get back to that top seed. I think they'll probably be another major contender. Obviously, it's a disappointing way to start the season, but I wouldn't worry too much if I'm a Warriors fan. That wraps up this list. If you did enjoy, hit the like button and subscribe. I know it's early in the season, but there are a few teams that definitely started out flat, and obviously no panic buttons yet for most of them, but if you're the Lakers, you probably are panicking. If you enjoyed my video, as I said, I would love if you'd hit the like button and subscribe. Try turning on post notifications as well so you never miss an upload. It helps me out. It helps you guys out as well. Thank you all for watching this one. I will continue to upload weekly, daily. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.